The house sat at the end of a wide private road, hidden behind tall gates and quiet trees. People in the city often talked about it, even those who had never seen it in person. It was one of those places that felt larger than life, the kind that made others slow down just to look. For the family living inside, this level of comfort had become normal. Luxury was no longer exciting. It was expected. The birthday coming up was not just another date on the calendar. It was meant to be a statement, a reminder to everyone around them that they were still important, still powerful, and still admired. The planning started weeks earlier. Event planners came and went. Designers discussed colors, lights, and themes. Every small detail had to reflect success. The person whose birthday it was had grown up surrounded by wealth. From a young age, expensive things were never rare. Big celebrations were common, but this one was different. This one was meant to be perfect. The family wanted guests to leave impressed, even slightly jealous. That feeling mattered more than laughter or warmth. Inside the house, conversations were short and sharp. Staff members moved quietly, careful not to make mistakes. Everyone knew that errors were not taken lightly here. A spilled drink or a delayed task could turn into a serious problem. Over time, people learned to keep their heads down. The birthday person often walked through the rooms with a phone in hand, checking messages and social media. Comments from friends and followers mattered deeply. Being admired had become part of their identity. They believed respect came from money, clothes, and status. Other people existed in the background, useful only when needed. The family spoke proudly about the guest list. Business partners, local influencers, and well-known figures were all invited. Some came for friendship, others for opportunity. Very few came for real connection. Still, the family believed that being surrounded by such people meant they were doing something right. As the day grew closer, pressure filled the air. The house became louder. Deliveries arrived every hour. Decorations were tested and retested. Food menus were reviewed again and again. Nothing was allowed to look simple. Simple meant ordinary, and ordinary was unacceptable. The birthday venue was not the house itself, but a high-end location in the city. It was chosen carefully. A place known for hosting elite events. The kind of place where photos looked good from every angle. The family wanted the world to see this celebration, even those who were not invited. On the morning of the birthday, the family woke early. There was excitement, but it felt tense rather than joyful. Staff helped with clothes and styling. Mirrors reflected expensive fabrics and polished shoes. Everything looked flawless on the outside. Before leaving, the birthday person stood for a moment, checking their reflection. They smiled, satisfied with what they saw. To them, this day was proof that they had made it. That they were above struggle, above criticism, above ordinary life. At the venue, workers were already busy. They adjusted tables, tested lights, and prepared food. Many of them had been working since early morning. Some were tired, others nervous. Big events always came with risk. When powerful people were involved, mistakes were remembered. The family arrived in luxury cars. Heads turned. People whispered. Some guests had already arrived and watched closely as the birthday person stepped out, smiling confidently. Cameras flashed. Compliments followed. It was everything they had hoped for. Inside, music played softly. The room glowed with warm lights. Everything felt expensive. Guests greeted one another with polite smiles and light conversation. Most of it felt rehearsed. Everyone was careful with words, careful with laughter. The birthday person moved through the crowd, accepting praise as if it were deserved. They barely noticed the workers around them, except when something was needed. A glass refill, a chair adjustment, a quick command given without eye contact. To them, this was normal. They had never learned to see the people serving them as equals. They believed kindness was optional when money was involved. As the event continued, more guests arrived. Laughter grew louder. Drinks flowed freely. People began sharing photos online. The celebration was becoming visible to the world, exactly as planned, but beneath the shining surface, cracks already existed. Stress was high. The staff rushed to keep up. Small mistakes began to happen, the kind that occurred any large event. Nothing serious. Nothing intentional. Still, the birthday person was already irritated. They wanted everything to go smoothly. This day was about them, and nothing was allowed to distract from that. They did not realize that this same belief would soon turn perfect image into something very different. What started as a celebration of success was quietly moving toward a moment that would expose who they really were. The music played on. Smiles stayed in place. No one yet knew that this birthday, planned to impress everyone, would soon be remembered for a very different reason, and for one person working quietly in the background. This night would become unforgettable in a way no one deserved. The party moved deeper into the evening, and the room felt warmer as more people filled the space. Laughter echoed against the walls, glasses clinked, and music grew louder. On the surface, everything still looked perfect. Anyone walking in at that moment would think it was a dream celebration. The birthday person stood near the center of the room, surrounded by guests who praised the decorations, the food, and the atmosphere. Each compliment was met with a proud smile. They nodded as if all of this was natural, as if success like this required no effort or help from anyone else. In the background, the workers moved quickly. Some carried trays, others checked tables, and a few stayed near the kitchen doors, waiting for the next request. One worker, younger than most, had been assigned to refill drinks near the main seating area. It was their first time working an event of this size. Their hands shook slightly as they focused on doing everything right. The worker had been on their feet since early morning. They had skipped a proper meal just to arrive on time. Still, they kept going, reminding themselves that this job mattered. The money would help with rent. It would help at home. Mistakes were not an option. As the birthday person laughed with guests, they raised their empty glass without looking. The worker noticed and stepped forward quickly to refill it. In the rush, someone behind bumped into the worker. Just a small push. Enough to cause a few drops to spill onto the table. It was barely noticeable. A napkin could have fixed it in seconds. But the birthday person noticed. Their smile disappeared instantly. The room around them seemed to pause, even though the music continued. They looked down at the table, then at the worker, their face tight with irritation. "Are you serious?" They said loudly. The worker froze. Their heart dropped. They began to apologize, speaking softly, trying to explain. "I'm sorry. It was an accident." The birthday person cut them off. "Do you know how expensive this setup is?" They said, their voice sharp. "Do you have any idea where you are?" Nearby guests turned their heads. Conversations stopped. A few people shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. The worker stood there holding the bottle with trembling hands. Their face burned with embarrassment. I said, "I'm sorry," they repeated quietly. "I'll clean it right away." Instead of letting it go, the birthday person laughed, not in a kind way. It was a short, mocking sound. "This is what happens when they hire people who don't belong in places like this," they said loud enough for many to hear. A few guests forced nervous smiles. Others looked away. One or two pulled out their phones, pretending to check messages. But their cameras were already recording. The worker felt smaller with every second. They reached for napkins, hands shaking, trying to fix the problem. No one helped them. No one told the birthday person to stop. "Just get out of my sight," the birthday person said, waving a hand as if dismissing an object. "I don't want clumsy people ruining my night." The words hit harder than the spill. The worker swallowed hard. Their eyes filled, but they refused to cry there. Slowly, they set the bottle down, nodded, and walked away. Their steps felt heavy. Every guest they passed felt like another pair of judging eyes. Behind them, the party continued. Music rose again. Laughter returned, though it sounded thinner than before. In a quiet hallway near the kitchen, the worker leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. They wiped their face quickly, not wanting anyone to see. They had faced hardship before, but being shamed in front of so many people felt different. It felt personal. It felt cruel. A supervisor approached, whispering that they should leave early. Not because they had done something wrong, but because the situation was uncomfortable. The worker nodded again, thanked them, and collected their things. As they stepped outside into the cool night air, The noise from inside faded. The city lights blurred as tears finally fell. They wondered how someone could have everything and still choose to hurt another person so easily. Inside the venue, whispers spread. "Did you see that?" One guest asked another. "That was harsh," someone replied. Others shrugged. "That's just how they are," one person said. Power changes people. Birthday person noticed the mood shift, but brushed it off. They convinced themselves they had done nothing wrong. In their mind, respect was something workers had to earn. Phones buzzed quietly across the room. Short clips had already been shared. No captions yet. Just moments frozen in time. A raised voice, a lowered head. The birthday person posed for photos, unaware that the story of the night was already changing. Later, as the cake was brought out and candles were lit, applause filled the room. The birthday person smiled again, making a wish. Cameras flashed from every angle, but the wish was made in a room that no longer felt warm. Some guests clapped out of habit, not joy. Others avoided eye contact, thinking about the worker who had disappeared quietly. The celebration continued, but something had shifted. The night that was meant to shine had developed a shadow. And outside, walking alone toward a bus stop. One person carried a memory that would stay with them far longer than any birthday ever could. The day after the birthday. The city seemed to whisper about what had happened. Small clips from the night had made their way online. The worker's moment of shame, captured in short bursts of video, began to circulate quietly. At first, only a few people saw it. But social media had a way of growing faster than anyone expected. The family who had hosted the celebration woke up to notifications. Messages of praise for the party mixed with messages that carried unease. Some people asked what had happened to the worker. Others shared opinions, not knowing all the facts, only what they had seen in the short clips. The family member who had humiliated the worker ignored most messages, scrolling past them with a frown. Inside the house, the mood was different from the night before. No music, no laughter. The reality of what had happened began to settle in. One family member, the birthday person, sat alone in a quiet room, looking at the videos again and again. They told themselves it had been a minor thing, just a reaction to a mistake. But the sting of judgment from people they didn't know started to make them uneasy. Business partners sent careful messages. Compliments were mixed with cautious words. Invitations for collaboration slowed. The family noticed that some people they had considered friends seemed distant. Conversations that once felt natural now carried a tone of judgment. The public image they had worked so hard to protect was quietly cracking. Meanwhile, the worker who had been humiliated tried to return to daily life. They went to their regular job, hoping to keep things normal. But in their mind, the event stayed alive. Each time they remembered the laughter, the dismissive gestures, and the words spoken in front of strangers, the memory hurt all over again. People at work noticed a quiet sadness in their eyes. Some asked if they were okay, but they nodded, pretending to be fine. The city continued to talk. Small posts appeared online, sharing different perspectives. Some sympathized with the worker, praising their patience and dignity. Others focused on the birthday person, criticizing arrogance and cruelty. Even though only a few seconds of video had been shared, the story began to feel bigger than anyone expected. The family struggled with the change. Inside the house, there were conversations that had not existed before. One sibling spoke up quietly, suggesting that perhaps the reaction had been too harsh. Another dismissed the idea, arguing that people had to understand their place. The birthday person felt torn, hearing a small voice of doubt for the first time. It was uncomfortable. They had never questioned their actions before. The worker, meanwhile, decided not to remain silent. They contacted a few local social platforms and told their side of the story. Carefully, without anger, focusing on honesty and experience rather than blame. Their words resonated with many. Comments came from strangers expressing support and understanding. Some even offered small gestures to help, whether kind words or connections for better opportunities. The family began to notice the growing attention online. The birthday person watched as the story of the incident spread. Each time their phone buzzed, They felt a mix of frustration and worry. The attention was no longer praise, it was criticism. It was a reminder that a single moment, one careless action, could ripple far beyond what anyone imagined in private. The birthday person felt a growing tension. The luxurious home and the beautiful celebrations suddenly seemed shallow. The realization that wealth and admiration could not protect them from accountability was new and uncomfortable. They began to think about their life differently, about how they treated others, and about what truly mattered. Outside, the worker began to notice small changes too. Some people who had seen the online posts reached out with job offers, mentorship, or advice. The humiliation remained a memory, but the support reminded them that their worth was not defined by a single cruel moment. Each small message, each kind word, became a tiny step toward rebuilding confidence. The family, on the other hand, faced subtle consequences in other areas. Invitations to certain events were delayed. Partnerships became cautious. Even social circles, once filled with admiration and agreement, began to whisper behind closed doors. The luxury and power that had always felt untouchable now had limits, showing that reputation, unlike money, could be fragile. Inside the house, tension grew between family members. One tried to explain that kindness and humility could restore balance, while another resisted, claiming that control and status were what mattered most. Arguments were held quietly, but their effect was real. The birthday person began to feel a quiet pressure, an internal questioning they had never experienced before. Meanwhile, the worker continued their life with resilience. They had been humiliated, yes, but they had dignity. Each day brought challenges, but also small victories, conversations with friends who believed them, new job opportunities, and moments of personal strength that reminded them they were more than a viral clip. By the end of this part of the story, it became clear that a single incident could change many lives. The birthday person began to see the cost of arrogance, the weight of public attention, and the value of treating others with respect. The worker, despite being humiliated, discovered unexpected support and new beginnings. The world outside, though fast-moving and often unforgiving, showed that actions had consequences, and even small gestures could ripple far beyond anyone's control. The day closed with quiet reflection. One life was beginning to reconsider priorities, the other finding strength and dignity. The consequences were not over, and the story was far from complete, but both lives were already moving in new directions, shaped by a single night, a public moment, and the choices that would come next. Days passed since the birthday, and the family noticed the quiet tension growing stronger. Notifications on phones, messages from friends, and comments online made it impossible to ignore. The birthday person tried to continue life as usual, but a part of them could not stop thinking about what had happened. The worker's dignity, the humiliation in front of everyone, and the whispers of strangers weighed heavily on their mind. Inside the house, the birthday person spent more time alone than before. The grand spaces, the expensive furniture, and the luxury that once felt comforting now seemed empty. Conversations with family members were short. Some offered advice, some defended the actions from the party, and some stayed silent. The silence was the hardest. It forced the birthday person to confront their own thoughts without distraction. They began to remember small moments from the party differently. The worker's nervousness, the small spill, and the reaction that had seemed justified at the time now appeared cruel and unnecessary. Pride had clouded judgment. What had been an accident now felt like a choice to harm someone, and the memory refused to fade. This awareness grew into something stronger over the next few days. The birthday person realized that ignoring the situation, pretending it had not happened, or hiding behind wealth would not fix anything. The attention from social media, the disapproval of peers, and the uneasy silence from family all pointed to one truth: action was necessary. One morning, they decided to do something they had never done before. They picked up the phone, scrolled through the messages, and found a way to contact the worker. It was not easy. Pride, fear, and uncertainty tried to stop them. But they pressed on. telling themselves that this step was about more than saving reputation. It was about doing what was right. The first message was simple, polite, and honest. It did not excuse behavior. It did not ask for forgiveness immediately. It acknowledged the incident and expressed a desire to speak. The birthday person did not expect a reply, but after a few hours a response came. It was cautious, reserved, but it was an opening. A meeting was arranged in a public place, somewhere neutral and safe. Both parties arrived separately, hearts beating with anticipation and nervousness. The worker was polite but guarded. The birthday person, normally confident in every situation, felt a new kind of vulnerability. There was no staff, no luxury, no audience, just two people facing the truth. The conversation began with the birthday person admitting their mistake openly. They spoke of regret, the realization of cruelty, and the desire to make amends. There were no excuses. They did not blame the worker or the situation. They spoke honestly about what they had done wrong and how it had affected someone else. It was the first time in a long while they had truly listened, not just heard, but listened. The worker, listening quietly, could see the sincerity. They remembered the humiliation, the public laughter, and the discomfort, but they also saw courage. Not the kind that comes from wealth or power, but the courage to admit fault. To face someone who had caused harm without protection or audience, it was unexpected. It was human. The conversation grew longer. Words were exchanged, questions asked, feelings expressed. The birthday person wanted to understand, to learn, and to help. The workers shared how the incident had affected them, not just the embarrassment, but the deeper sense of being unseen and undervalued. They spoke about dignity, respect, and the small victories that kept them going despite hardship. The birthday person listened, sometimes silently, sometimes asking gentle questions. Each word from the worker revealed a world they had ignored, a world beyond luxury and attention. A world where kindness mattered more than wealth, where respect was earned through empathy, not status. They began to realize that this meeting was about more than apology. It was about understanding life from another perspective. Eventually, the conversation moved toward action. The birthday person asked what could be done to make a real difference. It was not about money, gifts, or public recognition. It was about acknowledging humanity, rebuilding trust, and offering support in a meaningful way. The workers suggested ways in which guidance, opportunity, and respect could help, and the birthday person agreed. Willing to step beyond comfort to take responsibility, the decision made in that moment would change both of their lives. For the birthday person, it was the beginning of a journey toward humility, empathy, and meaningful relationships. For the worker, it was a recognition that dignity and perseverance could lead to unexpected support and new opportunities. Both left the meeting with a sense of clarity and purpose that neither had anticipated. Over the following weeks, small but important actions followed. The birthday person reached out to people in their network, creating real opportunities for the worker. They listened more, treated others with respect, and learned that leadership and power were most meaningful when paired with care and responsibility. The worker embraced these chances, proving their skill, determination, and character. The world around them began to notice change. Social media posts that once criticized arrogance were now balanced by stories of accountability and growth. Friends and colleagues saw a shift in behavior that went beyond words and into deeds. Respect slowly returned, not forced by wealth or status, but earned through action in private moments. The birthday person reflected on how a single decision could ripple across lives. The choice to confront a mistake openly, to listen, to act humanely, had far more value than any celebration, any luxury, or any applause. For the worker, the decision had brought recognition, opportunity, and a renewed sense of self-worth. By the end of this part of the story, both lives were no longer the same. The birthday person had taken the first real step toward meaningful change. The worker had reclaimed dignity and discovered new paths forward. The incident that had begun with public shame had transformed into a moment of human connection and growth, showing that even the smallest choices made with courage and sincerity could lead to lasting impact. Both understood that this was only the beginning. The journey ahead would have challenges, but it was built on something deeper than fear or wealth. It was built on respect, honesty, and the decision to act when it mattered most. Months passed, and the changes in both lives became more evident. The birthday person, once focused on luxury and admiration, began to notice the deeper value of respect, kindness, and understanding. They spent less time worrying about appearances and more time listening to people who had been overlooked in the past. The house, still grand, felt different now. Spaces that once only reflected wealth now reflected thoughtfulness. Decisions were no longer about status alone, but about impact. The worker, now more confident and supported, embraced new opportunities that arose from the birthday person's efforts. They had been offered mentorship, guidance, and even introductions to networks that could help their career grow. Each step forward was taken with dignity and careful thought. They understood that their talent and perseverance were recognized, and that recognition came not from being noticed in a viral video, but from consistent effort and character. Social media, which had once been a platform for humiliation, now became a platform for accountability and growth. Posts that highlighted personal development and sincere apology received positive responses. People who had been critical began to see genuine change. The public noticed that a life could turn around when mistakes were confronted with honesty and effort. Inside the birthday person's home, family dynamics slowly shifted. Conversations that had once been superficial now carried depth. Family members began to talk openly about mistakes, lessons, and values. It was uncomfortable at first, but over time, the discomfort became a sign of growth. Arguments were no longer about pride or status, but about understanding and shared improvement. The birthday person discovered that humility could strengthen relationships rather than weaken them. Meanwhile, the worker continued to thrive in their own life. They were recognized for their skill, dedication, and integrity. Opportunities that had seemed unreachable before became achievable. Their confidence grew not from revenge or compensation, but from acknowledgement of their worth and consistent action to move forward. They maintained a quiet pride, rooted in resilience and dignity. The bond between the two, once defined by a moment of shame, evolved into a connection built on respect and understanding. Meetings that had begun awkwardly with apologies turned into discussions of personal growth, collaboration, and shared experiences. Each learned from the other. The birthday person learned empathy and the value of humility, while the worker learned that integrity could be noticed and rewarded when paired with patience. Occasionally, memories of that fateful night resurfaced. The birthday person remembered the embarrassment they had caused, and the worker remembered the shame they had felt. But both had moved beyond it. Instead of bitterness or avoidance, the memory became a lesson, a reminder of the power of choices and the importance of human connection. New celebrations took place. Smaller and quieter, focused more on connection than display. The birthday person began inviting neighbors, colleagues, and friends who were not chosen for status but for meaningful relationships. Meals were shared, stories exchanged, and laughter became genuine rather than performative. Luxury was no longer the main attraction. It was kindness, respect, and attention to others that made the moment special. The worker participated in these new events too, not as someone being helped, but as an equal partner in experiences. Their presence was welcomed and appreciated, and their perspective contributed to conversations, decisions, and plans. The shift in balance between them and the birthday person became a symbol of growth and mutual respect. Outside the immediate circle, lessons spread quietly. People who had observed the incident and its aftermath shared stories of change. Some spoke about the courage it takes to admit mistakes. Others discussed the impact of empathy and the importance of giving others a chance to succeed. The ripple effect of one public humiliation transformed into a ripple of learning and reflection, impacting more than just the two directly involved. The birthday person, looking back, could see clearly how a single choice had redirected their life. They had chosen to face discomfort, admit wrongdoing, and act with genuine care. That choice had opened new doors, repaired relationships, and taught lessons that no luxury or status could ever provide. They realized that true influence was earned through integrity, not spectacle. The worker, reflecting on the same events, understood the strength it took to maintain dignity in the face of shame and the resilience needed to accept unexpected support. They learned that kindness could be extended from unexpected sources and that change was possible when people took responsibility for their actions. Together, they had created a small but meaningful impact on each other's lives. The night that once symbolized public shame now became a turning point. The worker gained opportunities, respect, and recognition. The birthday person gained understanding, humility, and a sense of purpose that went beyond admiration or status. The story concluded not with dramatic celebrations, but with quiet reflection. Lives had changed, not overnight, but through consistent, sincere choices. One moment of public shame had led to personal growth, empathy, and meaningful connection. Both individuals carried lessons into the future, forever shaped by the night, the decision, and the courage to act when it mattered most. The luxury of the birthday had faded from memory, replaced by something far richer: humanity, understanding, and the realization that true wealth was measured not by appearances, but by character and the impact one had on others. And in that quiet, the lives of both had been transformed in ways neither could have imagined at the beginning. Months had passed since the life-changing decision, and both individuals continued to grow in ways they had never expected. The birthday person, once consumed with status, admiration, and appearances, developed a deeper understanding of people around them. They realized that wealth could open doors, but it could not create genuine connection or respect. The true measure of influence was how one treated others, especially those who had no power or voice. They began spending time differently. Meetings, events, and parties were no longer just about showcasing luxury. They were about learning, listening, and helping. Each interaction became an opportunity to understand someone's perspective, to appreciate effort, and to support growth. Staff, friends, and colleagues noticed the change. Conversations were warmer, guidance was offered sincerely, and even small gestures were meaningful rather than performative. The worker, now more confident and respected, had begun taking on larger responsibilities. They had been offered positions that allowed them to use their skills fully, and they approached each opportunity with determination. Their past humiliation was no longer a weight, but a reminder of resilience and the importance of dignity. Each day brought a sense of purpose, a chance to demonstrate ability, and a way to influence their own path. Together, they occasionally collaborated, not because of power or social expectation, but because mutual respect had developed. Meetings and discussions now centered on ideas, solutions, and learning from each other. The birthday person valued the worker's input, seeing that insight and experience came from character and skill, not social status. Social media, which had once magnified shame, now reflected growth and learning. Posts highlighted accountability, change, and collaboration. People began to notice that real transformation was possible. Public perception shifted gradually, not because of fame, but because sincere action left a lasting impression. The story of one public mistake had evolved into an example of personal development and empathy. The birthday person had begun mentoring others, sharing lessons learned from that difficult period. They spoke about humility, respect, and the power of facing mistakes openly. Those who once admired them only for wealth now admired them for integrity, kindness, and leadership built on understanding rather than fear or status. The shift was subtle but significant. Meanwhile, the worker also began mentoring others. They shared experiences of resilience, dignity, and the importance of standing strong, even when faced with public embarrassment. Their story inspired people who had experienced similar challenges, showing that personal growth and opportunity could emerge from hardship. They became a symbol of perseverance and quiet strength. Both individuals reflected often on the night that started it all. The birthday celebration, which had been intended to impress, had instead exposed flaws and triggered growth. The humiliation, initially painful and unfair, had created a moment of learning that neither could have foreseen. Each remembered the fear, the embarrassment, and the tension, but also the courage it took to act differently afterward, in private moments. The birthday person realized that true happiness was no longer linked to admiration or luxury. Small acts of kindness, meaningful connections, and watching others succeed had become sources of genuine satisfaction. They discovered joy in helping others shine, in listening without judgment, and in learning from experiences they had once overlooked. The worker, too, recognized that life had changed because of choices, not circumstances. They understood that dignity, patience, and consistent effort mattered more than initial setbacks. Opportunities that once seemed unreachable became stepping stones. And relationships built on respect and understanding proved more valuable than fleeting recognition. Life continued with new routines and perspectives. Social gatherings became spaces for connection rather than display. Conversations focused on ideas, creativity, and mutual growth. Both individuals found themselves surrounded by people who valued them for character rather than appearance. They celebrated achievements quietly, savoring the effort behind each success rather than the applause it might generate. As time passed, the story of the birthday, the public shame, and the decision to act differently became a quiet legend among those who knew them. It was not told for gossip or entertainment, but as a reminder of the power of choice. The lesson was simple. Mistakes could be turned into growth, shame into understanding, and arrogance into empathy. The birthday person and the worker occasionally met to reflect, sharing stories of progress and insights gained along the way. They laughed about past misunderstandings and shared hopes for the future. Each meeting reinforced that change was possible when people acted with sincerity and courage. Ultimately, the luxury, the celebration, and the public embarrassment became background details in a larger story. The real wealth lay in the human connection forged through honesty, courage, and empathy. Both had learned that life could be transformed not through status or spectacle, but through the decisions made when it mattered most. Looking back, the birthday person could see clearly how far they had come. The worker could see how resilient they had been. Both understood that life had taken an unexpected turn, guided by a moment of shame, a choice to confront it, and the courage to act differently. The transformation was ongoing, but the foundation was strong, built on respect, humility, and the recognition that every person mattered in the quiet moments. Both often reflected on the night that had started it all. They realized that a single event, handled differently, could have changed everything in the wrong direction. Instead, it had become the catalyst for growth, understanding, and connection. And in that realization, they found not just lessons, but a lasting sense of peace and purpose that neither wealth nor status could ever provide.